The locker room fell silent as Jude Harlan pulled Gabriel Torres into a desperate kiss right there in front of the stunned team. What happened next would change everything for the struggling youth soccer program that hadn't tasted victory in 2 decades. 6 months earlier, Jude had stood on the sidelines of the Oakwood Eagles practice field in Northern California, wiping sweat from his brow under the relentless afternoon sun. At 42, he was the longest-serving head coach the academy had ever known, a man whose life revolved around drills, tactics, and the quiet hope that one day his boys would break the curse of mediocrity. The Eagles hadn't reached the state finals, let alone won a championship, since before most of his current players were born. Parents whispered about bad luck, coaches came and went, but Jude stayed because walking away felt like admitting defeat to the town that had raised him. That morning, the athletic director had called him into the office. "We're bringing in fresh blood, Jude." Gabriel Torres, former standout at UCLA, now looking for his first coaching gig. "Give him a shot." Jude nodded politely, but inside he braced himself. New assistants usually lasted 1 season before the pressure or the low pay sent them packing. When Gabriel walked onto the field later that day carrying a faded duffel bag and wearing a simple Oakwood Eagles polo, Jude felt an unexpected jolt. The younger man was 28, with an easy smile, warm brown eyes that seemed to catch every detail, and an athletic frame that moved with natural grace. "Coach Harlan, it's an honor. I've studied your tape. Your defensive setups are textbook." Gabriel extended a hand and Jude shook it, noting the firm grip and the faint scent of citrus cologne that lingered just a second too long. Practice began and Gabriel dove in without hesitation. He adjusted passing drills, corrected footwork with gentle corrections, and somehow made the 15-year-olds laugh even when they messed up. By the end of the session, Jude had to admit the energy had shifted. The boys responded to Gabriel's enthusiasm in a way they rarely did to his own gruff commands. "Not bad, Torres," Jude muttered as they packed up cones. Gabriel grinned. "Call me Gabe. And thanks. I think we can turn this around together." That night, Jude sat alone in his modest apartment overlooking the valley, replaying the day. He told himself the flutter in his chest was just relief at having competent help. Nothing more. He had spent years burying that part of himself after college whispers and one painful, almost relationship that ended when his father found out. Family expectations, community judgment, the academy board that valued tradition above all. It was easier to stay in the closet than risk losing the only thing that gave his life meaning. The weeks blurred into a rhythm of early mornings, late strategy sessions, and shared coffees from the corner shop. Gabe brought fresh ideas, zone presses, high press tactics borrowed from European leagues, and Jude found himself listening more than he spoke. The team responded slowly at first. A few wins against weaker opponents lifted spirits, but losses to rivals like the Riverside Hawks still stung. One evening, after a particularly brutal defeat, Jude found Gabe lingering by the equipment shed. "They're close, Jude. They just need to believe we believe." Gabe's voice was soft in the twilight, and when their eyes met, Jude felt that same unwelcome pull. He cleared his throat. "Belief doesn't win trophies, Torres. Execution does." Yet as he drove home, Jude couldn't shake the image of Gabe's steady gaze. Family dinner at his sister's house the following Sunday brought the usual questions. "When are you going to settle down, Jude? There's a nice girl from church." His sister meant well, but every word tightened the knot in his stomach. He changed the subject to the team, and for a moment it worked. But later, alone in his truck, he gripped the wheel until his knuckles whitened. What would they say if they knew the truth? What would the parents say? What would the board do? The thought of Gabriel's face flashed unbidden, and Jude pushed it down hard. On the field, the partnership deepened. Gabe stayed late, helping Jude break down game film, pointing out patterns Jude had missed. "See here? They're left back overcommits every time." Gabe leaned closer to the screen, his shoulder brushing Jude's, and neither moved away. The air thickened with unspoken tension until Jude stood abruptly. "Good catch. Let's call it a night." Gabe nodded, but his eyes held a question Jude wasn't ready to answer. The season progressed with mixed results. A heartbreaking loss in overtime followed by a gritty comeback win. The boys started calling Gabe Coach Gabe with genuine affection, and Jude watched from the sidelines, feeling both proud and strangely protective. One afternoon during a rain-soaked practice, Gabe slipped on the wet grass, twisting his ankle. Jude was at his side in seconds, helping him to the bench, wrapping the injury with practiced hands. Their faces were inches apart, rain dripping from Jude's hair onto Gabe's cheek. "You okay?" Jude asked, voice rougher than intended. Gabe smiled through the pain. "Better than okay now." The moment stretched until a player shouted for more balls, breaking the spell. Jude pulled back, heart hammering. That night he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying the touch, the smile, the way Gabe had looked at him. He whispered to the empty room, "This can't happen." But the words felt hollow even to him. By month 3 the Eagles sat mid-table, respectable but nowhere near title contention. Parents began showing up to practices more often, whispering about the new guy and how the team finally looked organized. Jude ignored the rumors, focusing instead on the upcoming derby against Riverside. Gabe suggested a risky formation, and for the first time Jude agreed without argument. The night before the match they reviewed plays at Jude's apartment, pizza boxes scattered across the coffee table. Conversation drifted from tactics to personal stories. Gabe spoke of his family in Los Angeles, accepting him fully, his younger brother who idolized him. Jude listened, envying the freedom, wishing he could share his own truth. When Gabe asked, "What about you, Jude? Anyone special?" the question landed like a weight. Jude stood too quickly, nearly knocking over a beer. "No time for that. Focus on the game." Gabe didn't push, but the look he gave Jude said he understood more than words could convey. The derby ended in a scoreless draw, but the performance was their best yet. In the locker room, the boys chanted Gabe's name, and Jude felt a surge of something dangerously close to pride mixed with fear. Later, as they locked up, Gabe lingered. "We're building something real here. Don't you feel it?" Jude met his eyes, and for a split second the walls cracked. "Yeah, Gabe, I feel it." The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. As Jude drove away that night, the first cracks in his carefully constructed life began to show. Little did he know the kiss that would soon shake everything loose was only months away, and the championship that would follow would be born from the very secret he feared most. The next morning Jude arrived at the field earlier than usual, hoping the solitude would clear his head. Instead he found Gabe already there, setting up cones with the same quiet determination that had begun to unravel Jude's defenses. "Couldn't sleep either?" Gabe asked without turning around. Jude froze, then forced a laugh. "Just reviewing notes. Big week ahead." They worked side by side in comfortable silence until the first players trickled in. Practice flew by, and for the first time Jude noticed how the boys looked to both of them equally, deferring to Gabe on technical questions and to Jude on mental toughness. The balance felt right, natural, even dangerous. That afternoon the academy director pulled Jude aside. "Parents are talking, Jude, saying the new assistant has brought fire back to the program. Keep it up." The praise should have felt good, but all Jude heard was the unspoken warning beneath it. "Keep it professional. Don't rock the boat." He nodded and walked away, fists clenched. Later, in the equipment room, Gabe found him staring at a clipboard without seeing it. "You okay, coach?" The concern in Gabe's voice cracked something inside Jude. He turned and for the first time allowed himself to really look at the younger man the way he had been fighting for weeks. "I don't know anymore, Gabe. Everything's changing." Gabe stepped closer, voice low. "Change isn't always bad. Sometimes it's exactly what we need." Their eyes locked and the air crackled, but Jude stepped back. "We have a team to run. That's all." Gabe nodded, but the hurt in his expression lingered long after he left. The following weekend, the Eagles traveled to face the league leaders. The bus ride was filled with nervous energy, and Gabe sat beside Jude, sharing headphones, reviewing opponent footage. Their knees brushed occasionally, neither pulling away. At halftime, trailing by 1, Gabe delivered a fiery speech about heart and belief. The boys responded, exploding for 3 second-half goals. The victory tasted sweet, and on the ride home, the team sang off-key while Jude and Gabe exchanged small smiles in the front seats. Back at the academy, the boys piled off, and suddenly it was just the two of them cleaning the bus. "You were incredible out there, Gabe," Jude said quietly. Gabe turned the fluorescent light, catching the gold flecks in his eyes. "We were incredible, Jude. Together." The word hung between them, and this time Jude didn't retreat. He reached out, touching Gabe's arm just for a moment. The contact sent electricity through both of them. Monday brought the first real test. A parent cornered Jude after practice, complaining that Gabe was too soft on the forwards. Jude defended him fiercely, surprising even himself. "Gabriel Torres knows what he's doing." The results speak for themselves. The parent left grumbling, but the encounter left Jude rattled. That evening he called his sister. "You sound different, little brother. Everything all right with the team?" He almost told her, almost confessed the confusing feelings, but the words stuck. Instead, he changed the subject to his nephew's upcoming birthday. Hanging up, he felt more alone than ever. Gabe noticed the shift immediately. During their now nightly film sessions, he kept things light, talking about his college days, pranks on teammates, and the ex who had broken his heart by choosing the closet over honesty. "I swore I'd never hide again, Jude. Life's too short." The story hit Jude like a tackle. He wanted to say he understood, to share his own history of near misses and lonely nights, but fear won. "Some of us don't have that luxury, Gabe." The words came out harsher than intended, and Gabe's face fell. "Maybe you could if you let someone in." The conversation ended awkwardly, and Jude drove home cursing himself. The next match was a must-win against a rival from the South Valley. Tension ran high, and during warm-ups, Jude overheard two players whispering. "Coach Gabe and Coach Jude, they're always together." You think the rest was lost in laughter, but Jude's stomach dropped. He pulled Gabe aside before kickoff. "We need to be careful. People are talking." Gabe's jaw tightened. "Let them talk, Jude. We're doing nothing wrong." But Jude saw the flicker of doubt, and it mirrored his own. The game ended in a narrow victory thanks to a late goal from their star striker, inspired by Gabe's sideline encouragement. In the celebration, the boys lifted Gabe onto their shoulders, and Jude watched from the shadows, heart swelling with pride and terror. Days turned into weeks, and the Eagles climbed the standings. Parents began bringing homemade treats for both coaches, and the local paper ran a small feature on the dynamic duo, turning the program around. Jude clipped the article and kept it in his desk drawer, a secret reminder of what they were building. One rainy Thursday night, after the boys had gone home, Gabe stayed to help with inventory. Lightning flashed outside as they counted balls, and suddenly the power flickered. In the dim emergency light, their faces were close enough to feel each other's breath. "Jude," Gabe whispered, and this time Jude didn't pull away. Their foreheads touched just for a heartbeat before Jude stepped back, voice shaking. "I can't, Gabe. Not here. Not like this." Gabe nodded, eyes shining with unshed tears. "I know. But I'm not going anywhere." The internal battle raged inside Jude every night. He replayed every glance, every accidental touch, every late-night conversation. His family's expectations, the town's conservative values, the risk to his job, all collided with the growing certainty that Gabriel Torres had become the most important person in his life. Meanwhile, the team sensed the shift in energy. Practices grew sharper, bonds tighter. The boys started calling themselves the family, and Jude realized with a start that Gabe had helped create that sense of belonging. As the playoffs approached, the pressure mounted. A scout from a big college program attended practice and afterward pulled both coaches aside. "Whatever you two are doing, keep doing it. These kids are playing with heart." The praise should have been pure joy, but Jude heard only the subtext. "Whatever you two are doing." He spent that night pacing his apartment until dawn. When Gabe texted a simple "You up?" Jude almost didn't reply. But he did, and they talked for hours about everything except the one thing that mattered most. By morning, Jude had made a decision. He would keep his distance, protect the team, protect himself. But deep down he knew the walls were crumbling, and when they finally fell, the shock would be felt by everyone. The first playoff game arrived under clear blue skies, and the entire town seemed to show up. The Eagles faced a tough opponent from the coast, and the pressure was palpable. Jude stood on the sideline, jaw set, while Gabe paced the technical area, offering constant encouragement. At halftime, tied 1-1, Gabe pulled the team into a huddle, his voice steady. This is our moment, boys. Play for each other. Jude watched the way the players hung on every word and felt a surge of gratitude mixed with envy. The second half exploded with 2 quick goals and the Eagles advanced. In the locker room, the celebration was wild, but Jude kept his distance from Gabe, afraid the joy in his eyes would give everything away. That night, the team gathered at a local pizza place and Jude found himself seated across from Gabe. Under the table, their knees brushed and neither moved. Conversation flowed easily until one of the fathers clapped Jude on the back. "You two are magic together. Don't know what we'd do without you both." The words were innocent, but Jude's stomach twisted. Later in the parking lot, Gabe stopped him. "We need to talk, Jude." "Really talk?" Jude nodded, but the fear won again. "After the season, Gabe. I promise." Gabe's shoulders slumped, but he respected the boundary. The quarterfinals brought rain and drama. Trailing by 2 at halftime, the boys looked defeated. Jude delivered one of his rare fiery speeches, but it was Gabe who turned the tide with a tactical switch that unlocked their attack. The comeback victory sent the town into frenzy, and suddenly the Eagles were 1 win from the semifinals. Social media buzzed with praise for the Harlan Torres coaching revolution, and Jude spent hours scrolling through comments, some supportive, some questioning the closeness between the 2 coaches. His sister called the next day. "People are saying things, Jude. Be careful." He hung up, heart pounding. Gabe arrived at Jude's apartment unannounced that evening, carrying takeout and a 6-pack. "We're not talking about the season tonight. We're talking about us." Jude let him in against his better judgment. They ate in silence until Gabe finally spoke. "I've been out since I was 18, Jude. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. I see you struggling, and it kills me because I know you feel this too." Jude stared at his hands. "It's not that simple, Gabe. My family, the academy, the kids, if they knew, it could destroy everything we've built." Gabe reached across the table, covering Jude's hand with his own. "Or it could make it stronger. But I won't push. Just know I'm here when you're ready." The touch lingered, and for the first time Jude didn't pull away immediately. They sat like that for long minutes, the only sound the ticking clock, until Jude finally whispered, "Thank you." The semi-final was against their old nemesis, the Riverside Hawks. The stadium was packed and the atmosphere electric. Jude and Gabe worked in perfect sync, one reading the game, the other motivating the bench. With 5 minutes left and the score tied 1-1, Gabe spotted a weakness and shouted instructions. The resulting goal sent the Eagles to the final. The celebration on the field was chaotic, players mobbing both coaches, and in the chaos Gabe pulled Jude into a quick hug. The contact lasted only seconds, but the spark was undeniable. Back in the locker room, the boys chanted "Eagles forever," and Jude felt tears prick his eyes. This was what he had worked for, yet the secret between him and Gabe threatened to overshadow it all. The week before the championship final was pure tension. Media interviews, training sessions, community events, all under the microscope. A local reporter asked pointedly, "How does it feel to have such a close working relationship with your assistant?" Jude answered carefully, but Gabe's smile in the background said everything. That night Jude couldn't sleep. He drove to the empty field and sat on the bench staring at the stars. Footsteps approached and Gabe appeared like a vision. Couldn't stay away either, huh? They sat side by side, shoulders touching, talking about dreams and fears until the sky lightened. As dawn broke, Gabe turned to him. "Whatever happens in the final, Jude, know that I love you. Not as a coach. As a man." The words hung in the cool morning air and Jude felt his world tilt. He didn't reply, but the tears that slipped down his face said enough. The final loomed like a mountain. The opposing team was favored heavy with talent and experience. The Eagles practiced with quiet intensity, and Jude noticed the boys watching him and Gabe with new respect. Rumors had spread, but instead of division, they seemed to inspire unity. One senior player pulled Jude aside. "Whatever's going on between you and Coach Gabe, it's made us better. We've got your backs." The simple acceptance nearly broke Jude. He thanked the boy and walked away, heart full. The night before the big game, Jude and Gabe met at the field one last time. No tactics, just two men standing under the floodlights. I'm scared, Gabe, Jude admitted finally. Of losing everything. Gabe took his hands. You're not losing anything. You're gaining a life worth living. They stood foreheads touching, breathing the same air until Jude made the choice he had been avoiding for months. He leaned in and kissed Gabriel Torres softly, tenderly, under the lights of the very field that had brought them together. It was brief, but it changed everything. The next day, the town gathered for the championship. The Eagles took the field as underdogs, but with fire in their eyes. Jude stood on the sideline, heart pounding, knowing the kiss had been the beginning, not the end. The game was a battle, but the bond between coach and assistant and the team they had forged would prove unbreakable. Yet the true shock was still to come in the locker room after the final whistle, when the entire world would learn their secret and the championship trophy would finally come home. The championship final kicked off under blazing California sun, with the stadium packed to capacity. The Eagles started strong, pressing high just as Gabe had drilled them, but the favored opponents struck first with a clinical counterattack. Jude paced the sideline, fists clenched, while Gabe shouted adjustments from the technical area. At halftime, down 1-0, the locker room was tense. Jude spoke first, reminding the boys of every obstacle they had overcome together. Then Gabe stepped forward, voice calm and powerful. This isn't just a game. This is our story. Write the ending we deserve. The words lit a fire, and the second half began with renewed fury. The Eagles equalized in the 63rd minute on a beautiful team move finished by their captain, who pointed to both coaches in celebration. The crowd roared, but Jude felt the weight of the secret pressing heavier with every cheer. Gabe caught his eye across the pitch and gave a small nod that said everything. With 10 minutes left, the opponents took the lead again on a deflected shot. The Eagles refused to fold. In the final minute of regulation, Gabe's tactical substitution paid off as the fresh legs created space for a dramatic equalizer. The stadium erupted and extra time loomed. During the brief break, Jude pulled Gabe aside behind the bench. Whatever happens, I'm proud of us. Of this. Gabe's eyes shone. We've already won, Jude. The rest is just numbers. The extra periods were grueling, but the Eagles defended like lions. In the 118th minute, with penalties looking inevitable, the ball found their star striker, who slotted it home past the diving keeper. The final whistle blew and pandemonium erupted. Players collapsed in tears of joy, parents stormed the field, and the trophy was lifted high for the first time in 20 years. In the chaos of celebration, Jude and Gabe were swept into hugs and high fives. The boys chanted their names, and for a moment everything felt perfect. But as the team made its way to the locker room, the adrenaline began to mix with reality. Jude's phone buzzed with messages from his sister, "Call me now," and the director, "Meeting first thing Monday." Gabe noticed the change in his expression and squeezed his shoulder discreetly. "We face it together." Inside the locker room, the boys were still singing when the senior player who had spoken to Jude earlier raised his voice. "Coaches, we know. And we don't care. You gave us this trophy. That's what matters." The room fell quiet, then exploded in cheers of agreement. The acceptance hit Jude like a wave, and tears he had held back for years finally spilled. Yet the true shock came seconds later. In the emotion of the moment, with the team watching, Jude turned to Gabriel, grabbed him by the shirt, and kissed him deeply, passionately, right there in front of everyone. The room went silent for one heartbeat, then erupted in whoops and applause. Cameras from parents outside caught the moment through the open door, and within minutes the video was spreading across social media. The shocking locker room kiss with his male assistant had just become public, and the consequences would ripple far beyond the championship. The next hours were a blur of interviews, trophy photos, and frantic calls. Jude's sister arrived at the stadium, eyes wide, but when she hugged him, she whispered, "I'm happy for you." "Really?" The director called, demanding an explanation, but the outpouring of support from the community, parents, and even rival coaches began to shift the narrative. Gabe stayed by his side through it all, hand brushing Jude's whenever possible. "We did this together," he kept repeating. Back at Jude's apartment that night, the reality settled. News vans lined the street, and social media was ablaze with the story of the gay coach whose love had inspired a championship run. Jude felt exposed, terrified, but also strangely free. Gabe sat beside him on the couch. Whatever comes next, we face it side by side. They talked for hours about the future, the team, the town, and the life they might build. For the first time, Jude allowed himself to imagine a world where he didn't have to hide. The following days brought mixed reactions. Some parents pulled their kids citing values, but more signed up inspired by the story of courage. The board called an emergency meeting where Jude and Gabe presented their vision for the program, emphasizing inclusivity and excellence. To everyone's surprise, the board voted to keep them both with a new contract that included diversity training for the entire academy. The town slowly embraced the change, with local businesses hanging rainbow flags and the newspaper running a front-page feature titled, "Love Wins the Trophy." Jude's family gathered for a quiet dinner where his parents surprised him with acceptance. "We just want you happy, son," his father said gruffly. Gabriel was welcomed with open arms, and for the first time Jude felt whole. The team held a special celebration where the boys presented both coaches with personalized jerseys bearing the number 20, the years they had waited for this moment. Yet the journey wasn't over. Old doubts resurfaced for Jude during quiet nights when the weight of public scrutiny felt heavy. Gabe was there every time, reminding him of their strength. They took long walks along the valley trails, talking about the internal battles Jude had fought and the betrayal Gabe had survived with his ex. Each conversation deepened their bond, turning fear into trust. As summer approached, the Eagles began preseason training with a waiting list of new players. The atmosphere was electric, and Jude watched Gabriel coach with the same passion that had first drawn him in. One evening after practice, they stood on the empty field, the championship trophy gleaming in the equipment room nearby. Gabe took Jude's hand. "Remember the night I told you I loved you?" Jude smiled. "How could I forget? It changed everything." They kissed softly under the same lights where it had all begun, and Jude realized the shocking kiss in the locker room hadn't been the end of his old life. It had been the beginning of the one he was always meant to live. The months that followed brought new challenges. A rival coach tried to stir controversy, but the community rallied. Players from other teams reached out, sharing their own stories, and the academy became a beacon of hope for young athletes everywhere. Jude and Gabriel's relationship grew stronger with each passing day, filled with quiet mornings, shared coffees, and late-night planning sessions that now included dreams of a future together. Summer turned to fall, and the new season brought fresh faces and higher expectations. The Eagles were no longer underdogs, they were champions, and the pressure to repeat weighed on everyone. Jude threw himself into preparation, but now with Gabriel by his side openly. They moved in together quietly at first, then with a small announcement in the local paper that surprised no one. The boys on the team embraced the change, treating both coaches like family. Practices became louder, more joyful, and the bond that had carried them to victory only grew deeper. Yet not everyone was ready for the new reality. A group of conservative parents organized a petition demanding the academy reconsider its lifestyle choices. The board stood firm, but the tension affected the team. During one particularly heated practice, a new player made a careless comment and the locker room nearly erupted. Gabriel stepped in with calm wisdom, turning the moment into a teaching opportunity about respect and teamwork. Jude watched with pride, realizing how far they had both come. That night, they sat on their porch overlooking the valley, and Gabriel spoke softly. "Remember when you were afraid to even touch my hand? Look at us now." Jude pulled him close. "I was a fool. You saved me, Gabe. You saved all of us." The season progressed with strong results, but a mid-season slump tested their resilience. Losses piled up and old doubts crept back into Jude's mind. Was the distraction of their relationship costing the team? He withdrew emotionally until Gabriel confronted him one evening. "You can't keep doing this, Jude. We fight together or we don't fight at all." The argument was raw, honest, and ended in tears and reconciliation. The very next game, the Eagles exploded for a dominant win, and Jude understood that vulnerability had only made them stronger. Family dynamics continued to evolve. Jude's nephew came out to the family, inspired by his uncle's courage, and the Thanksgiving dinner that year was filled with laughter and acceptance. Gabriel's parents visited from Los Angeles, bringing warmth and stories that helped Jude heal old wounds. The two families blended seamlessly, and for the first time Jude felt he belonged completely. As the holidays approached, the Academy hosted a community tournament inviting teams from across the state. The event became a celebration of inclusion with rainbow armbands and messages of support everywhere. The Eagles won the tournament, and during the awards ceremony, the boys insisted both coaches lift the trophy together. The moment was captured by dozens of phones, and the video went viral again, reminding the world of their journey. Winter brought quiet nights by the fireplace where Jude and Gabriel planned for the future. They talked about adopting someday, about expanding the Academy's outreach programs, and about simply growing old together. Jude's internal crisis had transformed into quiet confidence, and Gabriel's patience had blossomed into deep fulfillment. They attended their first Pride event as a couple, marching with the team and feeling the love of strangers who now saw them as symbols of hope. Yet life wasn't without setbacks. A former player from Jude's early coaching days resurfaced with accusations of favoritism tied to their relationship. The investigation was stressful, but the team rallied, writing letters of support, and the claims were quickly dismissed. Through it all, Jude and Gabriel leaned on each other, proving that love wasn't a weakness but their greatest strength. Spring training began with renewed energy. The boys were older now, some preparing for college scholarships, and they credited the coaches with teaching them more than soccer. One senior gave a speech at the end of practice thanking them for showing what real courage looked like. Jude and Gabriel exchanged glances, knowing the journey had come full circle. As the new championship season approached, the pressure returned, but this time they faced it without fear. The Eagles dominated the regular season and advanced through the playoffs with the same heart that had carried them before. In the final, they faced a familiar rival, and the game was a back-and-forth battle. With the score tied late, Gabriel made a bold substitution that paid off in a dramatic winning goal. The celebration was sweeter the second time because now the entire community celebrated with them. In the locker room after the repeat championship, the boys presented Jude and Gabriel with a plaque that read, "Coaches who taught us love wins." Tears flowed freely, and Jude pulled Gabriel into a kiss, this time without shock or fear, just pure joy. The moment was private, but the love was public, and the team cheered louder than ever. The years that followed saw the Academy grow into a model program. Jude and Gabriel became mentors to other coaches, sharing their story at conferences and inspiring countless young athletes to live authentically. Their relationship deepened with each passing season, filled with laughter, challenges, and unwavering support. The shocking kiss that had once threatened to destroy everything had instead built a legacy of acceptance and excellence. The third championship came on a perfect autumn afternoon, and by then the story of Jude and Gabriel had become legend in California youth soccer. The Eagles entered the final as heavy favorites, but the real victory was the life they had built together. After the final whistle and the trophy lift, Jude stood on the field surrounded by players past and present and realized how far they had traveled. Gabriel wrapped an arm around his waist in front of everyone, and the crowd cheered not for the win but for the love that had made it possible. In the years since that first shocking kiss, the town had transformed. The Academy now offered scholarships for LGBTQ athletes, the board had diversity policies in place, and parents from across the state sent their sons to play for the coaches who proved heart mattered more than anything. Jude's family gatherings were filled with pride, and Gabriel's parents visited, often treating Jude like their own son. The two men had bought a house on the edge of the valley with a backyard big enough for future kids and weekend barbecues with the team. Yet success brought new challenges. Media attention sometimes felt overwhelming, and old prejudices resurfaced during election years. Each time Jude and Gabriel faced them together, turning criticism into conversations that changed minds. The players they coached went on to college and pro academies, many crediting their coaches for teaching resilience and authenticity. One former player wrote a letter that read, "You showed us it's okay to be who we are and still chase greatness." On a quiet evening years later, Jude and Gabriel sat on their porch watching the sunset over the field where it all began. The championship trophies lined the mantel inside, but the real treasure was the life they shared. Gabriel took Jude's hand. "Remember when you thought one kiss would ruin everything?" Jude laughed softly. "Now I know it saved everything." They kissed gently, the same spark still there after all the years. The academy continued to thrive, and Jude and Gabriel eventually passed the head coaching reins to a young couple they had mentored, ensuring the legacy of love and excellence lived on. They traveled the country speaking at youth sports conferences, sharing their journey, and watching as more coaches found the courage to live openly. Their story became a book and then a documentary, inspiring thousands. Through every high and low, the bond between them never wavered. Jude's internal struggles had given way to peace, and Gabriel's patience had blossomed into profound joy. They had faced misunderstanding, betrayal from outsiders, and their own fears, but every sacrifice had led to greater strength. The team that once hadn't won in 20 years now stood as a symbol of what happens when love is allowed to lead. As they grew older, Jude and Gabriel still attended every home game, sitting in the stands cheering for the next generation. The boys would point them out, whispering, "That's Coach Jude and Coach Gabe. They changed everything." And they had. The shocking locker room kiss had been the spark, but the real fire was the lifetime of courage, commitment, and love that followed. True or false? The love between two men can transform an entire community and lead to unexpected triumphs.